All right. What's up, y'all? Check this out, dude. We are on the ground. This is In the Image Clothing Company, unorthodox and untraditional as we are. My name is Evan Strong, the founder. We are called In the Image Clothing Company because we address the human body. We're not just about clothing, we're actually about the human body's natural function, approaching it through the skeletal system, and we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. So, I know it's a little bit weird. I'm sitting on the floor of a bathroom. I get it. But stick around. We're going to talk about truths, things as they are. We're going to talk about the feet. And this is actually a video for what I just started right now, which is called the Naturally Functioning series. So, what I'm going to do is go through parts of the body throughout this series. We'll talk about them as they are, as they would naturally function if they were never to have been restricted from any kind of man-made, unnaturally flat things like the floorings and the countertops and the tables and the devices and things that we hold in our hands, whatever it is that's flat that we use in modern 2025. Today is the 20th of February, 2025. So as we talk about within In the Image Clothing Company, we get into these chronic patternings because clothing is imbalanced. Usually from the factory. If you purchase clothing, it's going to have some sort of imbalance almost always. There's tags within clothing nowadays that never existed in the past, just decades back and then ever before then. There's stretchy, unnatural materials that just never existed in the past, just decades back and never before then. So the human body is getting altered nowadays in ways that it never could have even had the chance to before, recent time. So we talk about these chronic patternings. People are in such persistent, chronic, constant pain, and they don't seem to know why. And we get down to the actual truth of it. I always say, don't believe me, Evan Strong. I'm just sitting here relaying truth, talking about things as they are. So within this episode, wow, that's funny because I'm normally filming what we call In the Image Clothing Company podcast, one of the thirds of our company, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. This here is the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where we address the human body's natural function. I talk about the anatomy of the body. I talk about clothing. We talk about eating and sleeping and staying hydrated and all these things that we do as a human being, walking, standing, sitting, and doing those things naturally, the way the human body is designed to do it, because we didn't design it, so we can't decide it. Episode 62 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast is titled, We Didn't Design It, We Can't Decide It, and I love that. I talked about more than the human body. I talked about our earth and a lot of cool things in that episode. I love it. But then we also have another third of us, which is In the Image Clothing Company music, where we do all things music that we do. I play guitar. I have a little Yamaha CGS 102A currently with a custom radius that I put into it because, as I was talking about with things in modern day that are flat, now classical guitars have been around for a long time, but the hands are not flat. And the open palm within our hand directly correlates with that open gripped arch within our feet. And that's what we're talking about here is the feet. So there's some context. Now, I'll run through this pretty quick, but this is what we always, well, just about always, usually we do within intros, talk about where clothing needs to sit, because it's the thing that really is altering human bodies. And then we talk about In the Image Clothing Company's 2 prerequisites in addition to just clothing, like tops and bottoms that we wear to allow them to fit on the body the way that the skeletal system is going to work. Because everything within the body, if it's a joint, it's just 2 bones connecting, and they only move the way they move. Everything only has the joints that it has. It only has the ranges of motion that it has. It only has the neutral positions that it has. And the body only works how it does. We can never tell our bodies to do anything. And so the key word under In the Image Clothing Company is always allow. Allowing the body to work, is what we say, right? So for that reason, pants that we wear need to be entirely above our hips. I'm not going to pull my pants all the way, or, show all the way up, but the waistband of my pants is all the way above my hips as a whole, because that way my hips aren't being restricted at all. So that's where they need to be, entirely above the hips. But here's the thing. Our core as a human being, me, Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, I relate the core of a human body to the core of an apple. Because if you take an apple and it's growing healthy on the tree, and you core the apple, take the center part of it out where the seeds are, the apple will then just wither away. And that's how the human body is. A lot of times we hear people say to activate your core before you do something, but the core should never be deactivated, and nor would it ever be. It's nothing to work up to or any kind of exercise that has to be done to get there. We talked about how we don't have to exercise a body that's just been designed to work. That's another episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, designed to work. But if we're placing things onto our bodies, I'll sit like this for a second. If we're placing things onto our bodies that are altering them potentially, and very much so, then they're just not going to want to work naturally. And it's not about what they want, but they just aren't going to be allowed to, right? Keyword under In the Image Clothing Company, allow. Okay, so because of that, the waistband of our pants needs to be slightly higher in the front than it is in the rear. In order to keep these core muscles working, activated, turned on, supporting the entirety of our bodies from top to bottom, allowing arches in our feet to even be there. Yes, I say because I'm looking at my feet and I'm like, yeah, this is sweet. If there is even any, well, there's very few videos up until today's date under In the Image Clothing Company where you've been able to see my feet. I just normally have shoes on when I'm making videos, and the feet are the foundation of the body, right? So important. Yeah, and so we talk about just the only way that they work, and we show people how to allow that to happen. But yeah, our core has to be activated, otherwise the whole body's suffering. The feet, the hands, the head, the shoulders, you've got your body turned off at that point. So that's where pants need to sit, okay? Don't let me tell you something, but that's how it is. The tops that we wear, the seams on top of our shoulders need to be evenly behind these little bones that are up here, because those are the other end of our collarbones. And that's just going to allow your shoulders to sit in their only neutral position. The only place they actually work, the only place the muscles actually insert, those trapezius muscles in the rear, these upper ones that do this, shrug your shoulders, they connect into the very rear of the base of your skull and along the edge of our spine on the neck, that cervical spine, and then they come down and connect into the shoulder. So the shoulders only will ever actually work behind the body, behind our head. That's where they connect. So that's where the seams of our tops need to be. Button-ups are different, as I mentioned. A lot of times I'm wearing button-ups when I say that, so I can use them as a visual example. But they have a band of material on the top rather than just a singular seam, so they'll just naturally sit behind the body. I love button-ups. In the Image Clothing Company will have button-ups available when we have our clothing for you to purchase, and they're going to be good. Right, staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work, as we say. So, I'll probably talk about our clothing more toward the end, if I do. If not, then cool, whatever, right? Much more than just a company that sells clothing, because we don't even have it as of today's date. So, the edge seams of our shoulders need to be right at the very edges, because if you have a ball and socket joint of the shoulder that's just going to move right here, you can't have a seam sitting in any other location without those two things combating each other. Now your shoulders are working down here. Your arches and your feet have now collapsed because of your shoulder seams. You see this? Elevated shoulders, just meaning activated upper trapezius muscles, and core, and arches, and open palms, all just the body working as a whole, as it does. Now you drop your shoulders, and everything deactivates throughout your whole body. So if anything within the human body is not working correct, something else and many things have to compensate. The body only actually works as a whole, or else it's taking a beating, really. So we've talked about the feet, but we're going to get into a lot in this. But one of our first two prerequisites, the first one of our two prerequisites for In the Image Clothing Company is the shoelacing technique that we use. These are, as of today's date, I have no affiliation, nor have I up until now, with this brand, but I love them. This is my favorite brand of shoes. As far as you don't got to care about my opinion, but when it comes to just allowing the feet to work, that's their whole goal. They have a slogan that is living life feet first. So this is In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique. If you can only kind of see it, if you don't quite understand it, if whatever, and the third time we say that, we've got so much content for In the Image Clothing Company on all three sides of the company. We've got many videos. You can find how to lace and tie shoes, right? Our technique, but it looks just like this. And with that, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside, right? To the center line of the body. Otherwise, you're never going to have an even body. You're going to have pain throughout the entirety of your body because we don't have a say, we don't have an opinion, we don't have some yoga class to understand that the human body has a center line. The sternum, the spine, the nose, the three things that I talk about are the center of the body. So with that, there's your even foundation at your feet. Now, secondly, we remove all tags from all clothing inside of it, okay? Because if there's a tag within clothing, it's going to alter your body. If you have a tag within the rear of your shirt, now your activated trapezius muscles are being moved out of their only working position, and the arches in your feet collapse. Even though, yeah, they're clear down there, they are only going to be able to be activated if the shoulders are doing their work, right? Dorsiflexion of the feet, which means this, right? The toes coming up. It's like the same thing as your shoulders coming up. It's the same thing as my wrist coming up, right? The neutral wrist with that slight cocked back position here, that's only going to be able to be there if your feet are unaltered. Otherwise, your hands are hurting, and your shoulders are hurting, and your back is hurting, and your hips are in a weird anterior position. And it goes down and up and throughout the body as a whole. It only works as a whole, okay? I like to give quite a bit of context so people know I don't just have some opinion. I always say, right, as I did, don't believe me, I mean it. So, all right. We also remove, when I say remove all tags, I mean within the shoes as well. If you can't get them out of the shoe, don't ruin the shoes that you've purchased or been given or whatever, or made. But, well, if you've made your own shoes, you probably haven't placed tags inside them. But you can put slits into the tag with a knife. Just get a lot of texture. You've got a tag on the top of the tongue of your shoe or anywhere inside your shoe. These like gripped arches, right? Look at my ankles. See my ankle here? How when I flex the muscles, it like expands. If I activate the arch in my feet, which again, they just always naturally be activated, there's a lot of like stuff going on here, right? Tendons coming down through and feeding the toes, musculature that's, I mean, you can see, right? I'm just flexing the muscles and they're just kind of expanding a little bit to just support the foot. So tags in the tongues of the shoes have to be removed. Something that just never existed until a few decades ago, right? So it's a new thing for human beings to have to deal with and experience. But there we go. That's what we talk about baseline within clothing. We get into like depth, right? This little seam within collars of t-shirts, we call it the dreaded collar seam here. We show the modification to do for that. You can find that wherever you find In The Image Clothing Company, being 2025. We have the internet, and that seam can deactivate the arches in your feet, because what that seam does is where it's placed, whichever side, it elevates that side of the body. It's almost always on the left side. So in the right foot, that gripped arch, right? Even shoulders, gripped arches. That right foot, if this comes up, really what it's doing most is dropping the other side and deactivating your right foot arch. Don't believe me, but truth is truth. This is just how it is. That's why people are having the problems they are with their right foot, unless, and in addition to all the other things, right? Tying shoes unevenly, that's just going to terribly ruin your feet. Seams within clothing, zippers, seams within zippers, the seams in the rear of pants that are twisting the pelvis, tags placed in only one side of clothing will change the right foot if they're placed in the left, right? Because the body compensates. It has to. It's vertical on an earth with gravity. So normally if there's a problem within the right side of the body, which is almost always the side of the body that has the problem and that we need to actually address when we're doing like releases within scar tissue and things, almost always the right side of the body. But it's because of what's within clothing on the left side of the body. And yes, tying that right shoe, right? I mean, you're right-handed, you're going to tie a knot that's going to pull your feet toward the right if you do the same thing on both feet. And now your left foot, that's actually how we should do it, right? A right-handed knot on the left foot, but then a left-handed knot on the right foot, okay? So there's the context I'm going to give. In the Image Clothing Company, this company here, we have so much information on just the anatomy of the human body, and we go into clothing. We make videos titled How Blank, meaning usually an item of clothing, affects body mechanics. I've personally made those videos up until today's date, so you can go check those out under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company. But here's the thing with the feet. I talk about this when I talk about the feet and a neutral ankle. There's a natural curvature going down the leg. Look at me right now, right? My wrists, this one's kind of out, mostly because I was like talking with it, and also I'm just kind of pulling. But a neutral wrist, right? Straight out from the pinky, straight out from the pinky, neutral wrists here, neutral ankles, they follow that natural outward curvature of the lower leg, like this. That's actually a neutral ankle because this bone here naturally bows outward like this, right? The whole lower leg. And you can follow that straight through the ankle, straight down to the heel of your foot, okay? Just like this, right? So right about here, because if I were to, I'm purposefully right here in the bathroom, by the way, because there's a tile floor, completely unnaturally flat. And then there's nice grip texture where my feet can really grip. So for the visual, that's why I'm in this location that's kind of like not so seemingly normal to be in for a video like this. But what I can do, right, is come forward a little bit and see this, like I'm talking about, that natural outward curvature that goes all the way down. In this position, I can just stand up, right? No kind of training that has to happen for that to be the case, as long as your body's unaltered. Or we can, that's what we do here though, is get it back to being unaltered after years, potentially decades of patterning from things like this. Meaning what I've discussed within this intro, right? But then all the things that we do discuss under In the Image Clothing Company. The feet grip inward. It's so common in 2025 for people to walk like this, right? They're walking around, their feet are pointing out. But we just established the feet have that natural curvature all the way to the very base of them right here that stems from the knee and goes all the way through the ankle and down. And so in this position, if I were to stand up, which I will, look where my feet point, right? That slight outward curvature of the leg, now you can see, right, how neutral that ankle is, just all the way to the ground, right? My feet are pointing not only straight, which is the direction I'd be going, right, if I'm walking, but also slightly in, because they grip. And so you'll see people walking with their feet out, and you cannot have your feet pointing out without your ankle being in a position that it's never going to actually work in, right? Because the bone of the leg comes like this, and then now, what? It goes like that, okay? Meaning it should never, because the activation of the feet is here. And now you're like this, and now you're like this, right? And so now you just have naturally healthy feet that go like this on an angle. And so, well, I'm gonna squat. The reason I kind of almost fell backward, I just don't want to make it seem like I couldn't have just squatted down. My heels are on the very edge of this carpet. But like sitting in a deep low squat, it's the same thing. If your feet are pointing, ow, it hurts, honestly. It hurts all through here, all through here. If your feet are pointing out, but if they're pointing slightly forward, or well, forward, but slightly in, gripped, then I can just drop and I'm fine, right? Heels on the ground, glutes on my heels. It's just that my hamstrings are hitting into here. Otherwise, I mean, there's nothing restricting as far as like flexibility that people think about, right? Or whatever. Heels on the ground, feet pointing forward. This is how the feet work. Because in this position, you've still got that neutral ankle coming down from the outward curvature of the lower leg through the ankle to the heels, and my weight's still on the outside of my feet as if I were like here, right? Like I showed earlier, right? So this is actually how the feet naturally function. And the reason people in 2025 have their feet doing this, and I purposefully make the weird voice and drop my shoulders and hands, because I can't lift my shoulders up. My shoulders come in front of my body, opposing where they connect in the rear of the base of the skull, right? And everything in my body deactivates if my feet are deactivated, because they're the foundation of the body. Even sitting down, even here, because I can sit and hold this with that neutral ankle and that gripped arch, even though it's not on the ground. my arches are gripped, they're activated. But if I try to sit the way that a lot of people stand and walk and move and sit and even sleep, right? Nowadays in 2025, like this, my shoulders come forward, my cervical spine curves, my jaw is in an unnatural position, and the jaw naturally stabilizes the entire body. And it's getting affected from the feet. But really the feet are just doing all they can, because in addition to any kind of incorrect shoelacing technique, in addition to tying shoes unevenly, in addition to stretch within clothing that just deactivates muscles within the body, in addition to tags within tongues of shoes that deactivates this whole, like I was showing when I was over here a little bit, all that muscle activation against a slippery synthetic tag, it's not going to want to be activating because it can't predict that, and it seems dangerous to the musculature of our foundation being our feet. In addition to that, there's a lot of times tabs within the tongues of shoes that hold the tongue here, rather than, see where I moved it from, where it was already sitting off to the side. Naturally, if we were to wear shoes that didn't have something restricting the center part of them, the tongues would naturally sit out, because look at my feet right now. Look at my feet this whole time. By the way, these are the Denver Leather by Xero shoes, Xero. No like partnership with them throughout this video or up until today's date at all, but I love these boots, and I definitely want to give them credit while I'm showing them within this. But yeah, so see this position of my ankles, it's the same here. If I'm just sitting, it's the same. Watch my ankles, right? And that the feet position, it's not going to change when I go here. I am on tile, so it's not the most comfortable, just unnaturally flat. But that position will always be there as a functioning human being, right? No matter what we're doing, it's the same position of that neutral ankle. So that's why I always say the body only works the way that it does. It's not some opinion. It's not some ideal world. It's not some exercise 6 times a week. It's allow the body to work in the Image Clothing Company. That's what we do. So that position is all you're ever going to have in a naturally functioning foot. But we have to have toenails fully supporting the toes, because if you can see this, when I'm on this carpet, my toes, you can see, I can tell. Watch this. My toes like grip the ground, right? I mean, because when I'm just using my feet naturally, I'll just kind of like move around, do some like natural movements a little bit, right? When I'm doing whatever I'm doing with my feet, it's harder on man-made, unnaturally flat surfaces, because those toes want to grip the ground. You can't have supported neutral ankles without the toes doing this, right? This is this, and pain and binding, cramping here, flat, gripped, open, right, is, oh, well, my heels can be on the ground, but it's kind of awkward for my eyes is really what I'm doing. I'm trying to see my own feet through what I'm filming this on. But yeah, right, neutral, gripped. And so I made a video for this side of the company, the main side of In The Image Clothing Company, in the fall of 2024, and I titled it Life Without Arches. Well, A Life Without Arches. And I talked about how it's hard to live without opposing gripped arches from the center line of our bodies. And it happens, right? You get an amputated foot or lower leg or whole leg, and now, yeah, you can get a prosthetic, and that's very, very helpful, but it's still not quite as easy to just move through your environment as if you have this gripping happening from the outside of the feet. So when I talk about how the pinky finger affects the entire body and how it's that neutral wrist, right? Straight out from the pinky is the neutral wrist. The pinky finger is huge, even though it's the smallest finger. The pinky toes are huge, even though they're just a small little toe. Because when I'm just like functioning and moving around, look at where the weight on my feet is, right? This is how we would just naturally work, kind of like a wrestler, right? You see wrestlers and they're down like this. That's because they're in a good position to where they're within ranges of motion of things and their bodies are activated. So they kind of look like they're very mobile, well, because they are, right? You have to be to do what wrestlers do. So anyway, the big things are anything restricting any part of the body is going to restrict the feet. Shoulders, right? Seams on shoulders, oversized shirts, dreaded collar seam, tags within anywhere in a shirt. Angles of your pant waistline, because my core, if it deactivates, my feet point out, right? The human body has internal rotation and it has external rotation. And then it has a neutral, which slightly emphasizes internal because of the way the feet grip in. So that's, like I said at the beginning, at the intro, as I talk about often, the feet. Oh, well, yes, talk about the feet. I'm a little bit tired, honestly, moving around like a wrestler like that for a few minutes. It wasn't a few minutes, a little bit worn out, but the core has to stay activated, as it always would naturally be. Otherwise, those arches in the feet, gone. Shoulders drop, whole body deactivated. So, pant waistline, right, goes directly to the feet. So that's the whole thing about how I say, if anything in the human body isn't working correct, something else and many things have to compensate. The body only works as a whole. It only does what it does. All these things that I say, that's just because it's the case, right? So anyway, there's how your feet would naturally work. And I've shown it if and when and where and how I have. But here's the thing too, right? When we have, can you see my toes? Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying, is the unnaturally flat surfaces in 2025 and just past years and going forward, that neutral position is harder to have when your feet don't have anything to grip onto. And what I was mentioning with the pinkies, that's where the weight is. I mean, you're similar to this, but not quite that extreme. You're more here, but this doesn't hurt. This shouldn't be a problem because look how neutral I still am as far as following that curvature, right? And so the feet naturally sit with most of the weight on the outsides. Like the hands are naturally here. They're not like this, right? Outsides of them, like I said with that neutral wrist, outsides like that pinky toe. So in this case, gripping the ground, well, there's nothing to grip, and so your feet just kind of fall. But on surfaces that would be textured, like our earth is everywhere, that would be walking, you can grip, you can really just grip the ground, and now you have opposing sides to your center line gripping, right? So something like this, like horse stance type of thing or whatever they do, right? It's an inward pull, actually. And that's actually just how squats are, right? I mean, see, I can be on the outsides of my feet because it's an inward pull toward the center line of the human being, okay? So that's how the feet work. The naturally functioning series, right? But that's just how they would work. That's the whole thing. There's no exercises to do. So whenever you check out any In the Image Clothing Company content, if you do, all that we're ever showing or saying or telling anybody is just how to allow no restriction to be there. Because what you'll notice is your right big toe, I can't speak for every single human, but just about, probably can't really put much weight on the ground. And your right toe is flatter and out. Well, the toe itself, but the whole foot. Clothing, it's clothing. But it can also be the hand, right? Using something that's unnaturally flat with the hand. Like I'm saying, the hands directly correlate with the feet. And so now you're here. Using something flat here in your right hand, right foot's like that, rather than activation, right? So dorsiflexion of the feet, like I was showing earlier, toes coming up, that is actually, like if your legs are straight out, that's actually here. It's not here. That if you're feeling cramping all throughout here, bound up muscles, right, shin splints, it's not a real thing. It's really not. It's just that you're within shoes that are causing your feet to be like this, and your dorsiflexion is actually like here. See that distance? Out here, you can only get so far, and your pelvis compensates. And then when your pelvis moves, the activation of things comes to the front of the legs rather than the posterior chain of the body. The lower spine, right, just directly connects into the pelvis. If your pelvis goes anterior like this, your spine curves, now your shoulders have changed, your cervical spine, you know, all the way up to the base of your head, your jaw's position, and your bite changes within your teeth. So that all is happening just from shoelacing alone, or, right, all the things that I mentioned, and anything else, heels on shoes, that can be affecting those naturally gripped arches, right? So, yes. Anyway, dorsiflexion is actually inward like this. It's not like this, like a lot of people, because if people go running upstairs like this, and look at the whole body adjusting, but you actually grip your arches, now your feet can just work with everything else just strong and stable. So the big thing to see as well is if we're wearing heels on our shoes, do I have something that I can place underneath? I don't need something necessarily to show it. If we're like this, right, like I was showing, let me get in the frame, in the frame, the door frame. Oh shoot, I just knocked. There's people in this house. They might think I'm knocking for them. This gripped inward position here, if you take a heel and place it under your shoe, now your feet are just going to collapse like this, right? It's hard for me to stay like this. I mean, I can stay like this with my feet on the outsides of them in this neutral ankle. I can keep my heels off the ground and like balance really well, right? But what that heel will do under the shoe, just because it's unnatural, is collapse the feet in, and now it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, you feel like you're falling. Well, because you have lost all the stability of your only foundation, the lowest point on your human body on an earth with gravity, being your feet, right? They only work how they do. They only work flat on the ground. There's a video within the Truth Behind series for In the Image Clothing Company titled The Truth Behind the Feet. And I discussed really, you know, what it takes to allow the feet to work and the truth behind why people's feet are in pain, if they are constant, persistent pain. But this one, I have shown how they just naturally work, right? So there you go. That's how the feet naturally work. Let me show you this real quick though. If I'm standing, right, the hands grip in line, okay? The fingers, you're not gonna use your hands very well like this. They work in line. Look at my feet with that gripped arch. Everything's actually closed up in line, right? That's just how everything works the best. It's closest to its center, like closest to the center of the forearm, all the toes and feet, bones and everything closest to like the central part of the leg, right? Everything within the body closest to its, without collapsing your feet arches, but right closest to your center line, which is your spine. Everything's gonna be a little bit harder out here than it is in here. And so with that being said, it's a big misconception, especially at this time period. There's things called toe spreaders that people like to purchase, people like to sell, and they'll stick these things between their toes. Like if I were to stick my fingers between my toes to spread their toes out, because within a lot of modern shoes, yeah, the toe boxes are too small, but there's a happy medium, and Xero Shoes does a good job at that. Xero, the brand. That's why one of the reasons I love them so much, because their soles are actually shaped really, really well in their shoe models. The thing is, if we spread our toes, and that's what I was gonna show. I'm not gonna pull myself up like that because I just want to show my body actually works. You can see how I can spread my toes pretty far like this. If I tuck my pelvis, it's easier, right? Because now I'm actually in true good internal rotation with my pelvis posteriorly tucked, like what the pant waistline would do. I'm just tall, so I've been kind of down here, and it kind of puts me into an anterior position of my pelvis. But I can really spread my toes, but the natural position of the activated muscles is closer to the central part of, like I'm saying, right, the body, and wherever it is within the body, central part of the forearm for the hands, right, neutral wrist, and central part of the leg for all those feet, bones and muscles and toes to grip into. They have really strong, stable feet that just will do what they do, right? So I feel like I'm like doing dance moves when I do that, but yeah. So what I was saying though is we don't want to be intentionally trying to spread our toes. Allowing the muscles to activate and work and get closer to each other and contract, then the muscles will just be turned on, working, and then they can spread if and when and where they need to. But if you spread them, it's kind of like having a pant waistline that's falling down in the front. You're elongating your core muscles when we want them to contract. But if we keep our core always contracted, as it would be, and watch my feet, I'm not doing that intentionally, that's just what happens, right? Meaning that they contract as well toward their center as the core contracts to the center of us, our being, right? Strong and activated, working, just like mobile, able to move, right? So with that being said, yeah, everything needs to stay contracted, and from that point, it's always just working, and it's able to just do what it's going to do. And then if it needs to elongate, it can, because it's used to working, right? And so then its natural ranges of motion will just like be there, right? So there's kind of like a tripod within the foot. Here, here, and here is really where the weight's displaced, right? There's a little bit of an arch this way within the foot, and then there's the arch that goes this way, right? But that's, again, that's only going to happen if everything can contract together to create that rounding here. And also, again, though, we need some grip. Unnaturally flat flooring that just would never be something we'd be walking on unless we human beings created it, and we didn't create our bodies, right? It's like things within our hands. The hand is round, as I talk about. The palm is open naturally, but it has to stem from the feet. So this is our first episode of the Naturally Functioning series, and this is the feet. So yes, cool. This is my first episode in this series, like I just said, so I'm just trying to make sure that I say what I feel needs to be said within this. And this is going to be a cool series. It's going to be really great because we can single out each part of the body to see how it naturally works, but then still understanding no matter what, it's not going to do that thing unless the body is working as a whole to the best of what we can, like I mentioned with an amputation or certain things, but right? So it's not dangerous to be on the outside of your feet. That's actually where you would naturally be, but these small little bones in here compared to like the bigger bones of the big toe, when you get out to the smaller toes, you can be putting a lot of pressure on them that doesn't feel so comfortable when there's not texture, right? So we're walking on hardwood flooring, we're walking on tile, concrete, asphalt. It's got a little bit more texture, it does, but still pretty unnaturally flat, right? Asphalt's a lot closer though to just like a sandstone rock, right? Like here in the United States of America, the state of Utah, we've got a lot of slick rock, right? Like Zion's National Park type areas. That rock is actually similar textured to concrete, or no, well, almost, but asphalt, right? There actually is a decent amount of texture to asphalt. But then you get to indoor flooring and you've got really smooth concrete or the other things that I was mentioning, and the feet just can't work that way. They just don't. They weren't designed to, and for reasons that you can see here. So anyway, that's your naturally functioning feet. But like we say under In the Image Clothing Company, it's not about doing anything that you're trying to have happen for a time. Like your workouts yesterday don't actually help you today, right? Meaning they're starting to wear off already. The body only has its natural, foundational, neutral baseline. This is how it works and this is what it does. And just keep it activated. Just keep it turned on. Keep it working. Keep it in the only position it's going to be where all the muscles can still do what they're designed to. And so even when we sleep, our feet arches will be activated. Even when you're sitting, well, that's why I'm sitting on the ground, other than just because I'm showing my feet and so the camera angle. I mentioned we can't be sitting in chair heights with weight on our hamstrings, which is this big muscle that spans the rear of the leg. Because you put weight on this muscle and you've deactivated your feet arches and your shoulders and your core. The body only works as a whole. So when it comes to naturally functioning feet, the naturally functioning series, which is what this is under In the Image Clothing Company, they have to be naturally functioning in all areas, all moments, all aspects of our lives. We can't just be trying to get them to work at the gym and then have them be doing something different once we leave. And like, again, even sleeping, the muscles are still going to be activated. They still have to have a neutral position. The blood flow still has to be able to go through. All the things that are happening still have to be that way, even when you're like intellectually unconscious and asleep. You still have to keep your feet in the only neutral position they're going to be in. Otherwise, the rest of your body will be altered in the ways that it is. So anyway, there's the feet. Like I said, today is the 20th of February, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. This is the Naturally Functioning series. So look out for more things under this series title if you want to, because they'll come as and if and when they do. It'll be some great things to have context for, so that when I talk about clothing and what it's doing, you can tell that I'm not just like, whatever. I like to make videos long. I like to give a lot of context so people don't think that I have an opinion, right? That's why I say don't believe me, because it's not about some opinion that I could or couldn't have. And so I know that it's not the most common for people to approach the human body through clothing, but it's the only thing placed physically on us. And so it's the only thing that can alter our bodies to that high of a degree. So, but pant cuffs, right? If your pants are sitting on top of your feet, then that dorsiflexion that we're talking about will just be inhibited, right? So anyway, there we go. Well, okay, I mean, that's the thing, is we could sit here and talk about all the things and anything and everything, but no give within shoelaces, ideally round. This shoe material itself, ideally no give, right? Like I said, entirely flat on the floor for the heel, or for like the sole, right? Zero drop, as far as it doesn't drop from heel to toe. And firm shoe soles, right? If you are trying to keep all the muscles within your feet activated and you're walking on a marshmallow or a water bed, that's going to be a hard thing to do. But that's what a lot of shoe soles are, is that type of texture. So there goes your activation within your feet, and they just don't work naturally. I mean, in nature, you're never going to be walking in mud if you have any way of getting out of it, or walking on a really hard to stand on squishy moss type surface if you can step off it and step onto some firm dirt, right, with a lot of good texture to it. So yeah, anyway, there we go. Naturally functioning series, the feet. Yeah, man, I mean, I get that's the thing with these kind of videos, is I don't know how much to say in which ones, because a lot of this I have said in other videos, but also it's good to just have its own video with all the context that it could need, I guess, right? And so, I mean, I could sit here and talk about all the things and anything, but the big thing is that angle, right? When we're thinking about the feet, we have to think about it all the way up through the whole body, and really just, start here and look down and see that curvature of the leg, and what happens and how to actually get to this from years of being here and walking like this, potentially running like this. We talk about how running is so damaging to the body. It's not an opinion. It's just, if your body's in such an unworking position to begin with, you might try to go on a run to get your body to be doing what you think is going to help it, but it's actually very damaging. So much impact, and the positions and things are just so unnatural, especially again on the flat flooring, right? Even if it's an outdoor surface. But tracks for running are just something that your feet muscles can't even activate against. something that the skeletal system is being pressed weirdly into an unnaturally flat external position, collapsed neutral ankles, right? Collapsed arches out here like this rather than gripping. So there's a lot to running. It's no opinion of In the Image Clothing Companies when we talk about that so often, because we do and we will always. It's always going to be what it is. But the big thing is the outside, like this is that shin bone right here, right? The outside of that, right on the very outside, if your feet have been tracking like this in a position they don't ever actually work in for X amount of who knows, then you're just going to get bound up scar tissue all along here, all up into the knees, and that just needs to be released. Just use your own hands and just release that. But while you're doing it, put your feet in their neutral positions, right? You can kind of work your feet through the ranges of motion. But like I say, and like I've said, and just as it is, because it's the truth, it's almost always the right side. You almost never need to even do much of anything to the left side of the human body. Really. Not in just like a certain kind of avenue or area of doing something or rehabilitation because of X, Y, or Q. You just are having the pain you're having because of the reasons you are, and it really is clothing, right? And even if that's shoelaces, shoes are clothing, and your body's being pulled external on the right side, and so it's the whole right side of the outer right side of the body that really needs the adjustment to get back to its internal, right? See that foot out here, external, flat things, open, you know, collapsed palm, collapsed foot arch, tensed up muscles on the outside, all through the body as we talk about, right? But releasing everything out here to get the emphasis back in here, and now you're centered. Okay, so yes, whenever you're doing any kind of releases though within something like shin splints, do it with that idea in mind, that neutral position, slight outward curvature from the leg all the way down to the base of the heel, and like work your feet like this as if they were just working, right? The way that I'm showing they work, the way that they do work, the way that everything's contracted, the way that there's that foot tripod, the way that your nice support from your toenails is going to allow your toes to work, and there you go. Pelvis will then be in a good position. Knees can then track in line rather than tracking like this, like you're hitting your other leg, right? Your foot has to point slightly in to track your knee in line. That's just the only way the human body works. So there you go. Naturally functioning feet. Yes. Okay. This big toe on the right foot, like I'm saying, on just about every single person's case, probably get a lot of inhibited motion to it, potentially pain all through it, right? We focus on the skeletal system, so don't go massaging all these muscles on the outside of your leg just because it's not going to really do that much, because it's not the muscle's fault. It's where the muscle is trying to adhere to the bone because of this position, right? This external non-working position. Release the adhesion, if you will, to the bone of that outer muscle that's all throughout up to the knee, and even all through in this outer part of the knee, and that will then allow this to release and get back to neutral. Okay, neutral and natural, the way that In the Image Clothing Company uses those two words, are synonyms when it comes to the human body, because naturally your body's going to be in its neutral position unless it's doing something like a reach or like a specific like movement with something, but then it always comes back to it's only neutral because that's where the insertions of muscles are going to pull, right? They're not going to pull here. They're going to only pull in their only neutral position, okay? Only neutral for the foot is nice and closed and in line. And then again, like I said, you can open it up, the toes, and spread it wider to do things. But now look at the angle of the ankle, right? Then the only neutral and the only actual working activated foot is here, nice and closed together. And there you go. Toenails. Toenails are huge, huge importance, or this will never happen. You have no support in your toes and they're going to fall out like this. Tension will be out in the outside of your leg, unavoidably. So support here allows grip, and now you're neutral. Okay, so shoelaces are massively important. Tags are massively important. Heels are massively important to not have at all in any case ever. I understand that it could cause more protection to be there between the base of your heel of your actual foot and the ground if you're in a place with something that could potentially poke into your feet, but it's going to alter your entire body, to the tip of your head, to the tips of your fingers, if you elevate your heels off the ground. Like, imagine me sitting like this, but now with heels, my shoulders fall and my whole body's deactivated because of that one thing alone, right? The tag, just that one thing alone, deactivates the whole body. Shoelacing techniques, collapsing the arches, that one thing alone deactivates the whole body. Feet that are tied in shoes unevenly, that one thing alone deactivates the entire body in a twist. Okay, so naturally functioning feet, there's a lot that has to be made sure of, if you will. There's a lot of intentionality that has to happen to not do anything other than allow the feet to work. And so it seems like there's kind of a lot to do, but it's just that any and all these things that I mentioned within here, they're just things that are potentially very much inhibiting the only way they work. And so we just stop the restrictions, stop inhibiting them, stop altering them, stop twisting them, stop collapsing the arches, stop removing the natural support for the toes, that is the nails. You just stop doing things actually, and then your feet just work because they were designed to by somebody who's not you and not me. Okay, yeah, so there we go, right? Naturally functioning feet. It's like this, right? You're walking upstairs, you're like this. You're running, if you decide to, right? It's like this. Just be careful. I mean, it's impact through your whole body, through every disc of your spine, through every part of everything in your whole being. Impact, impact, impact. Lightest strides that you can have, running on just the balls of your feet, right? Which is actually, again, like this. You're never going to run on the balls of your feet, by the way, if your feet are pointing out. You're just destroying your ankle and you have no motion. The motion's here, inward, right? And look at this range of motion versus if I'm out here, pain out here, right? And pelvis moves, and like I said, the entire body. So anyway, there you go. Naturally functioning feet. The thing with our shoelacing technique, though, is see how my toes go like this, right? I mean, if my feet are just doing what they're going to do, they go like this, meaning the toes flex backward right here. And so that's where, with our shoelacing technique, it pushes on the base of the toes, and so that it's like a nice firm pressure there. Gosh, it's mostly the flooring that makes that awkward to do. My body could do that so much easier on a textured carpet, right? Because then my toes can grip. But yeah, our shoelacing technique, that's the big thing with this bottom lace piece right here, is it presses into right here. And so the toes will then do what they do, flex backward. Any other shoelacing technique where the bottom lace right there is any different, then the toes can potentially go like this, and now your hamstrings are tight, your pelvis has changed, right? The arches hurt, and the feet only work how they do. So in the Image Clothing Company shoelacing technique, as I've mentioned, as I say, it does nothing to your feet. It just shapes the top of the shoe like the human foot is shaped. All the bones, ligaments, tendons, muscles within there, they only do what they do, and they do that in this position here, right? And that's it. And so let's shape something just like that and place it onto us for protection and go through our earthly existence. That's what we do. So, okay, there we go. I guess I say that and then what? Another 25 minutes of information. Yeah. The thing is, the outside of the feet, again, that's where everything is going to work, because people are training their glutes, and never will you improve, quote unquote, on whatever you're trying to get your glutes to do, which you never will get them to do anything besides what they're designed to. If your feet are altered, though, then you won't even have naturally functioning glutes. So what happens is, if the feet arches collapse, now all your internal rotation's gone basically through your entire body, and all the, I said this a little bit earlier, but all the emphasis goes to the front of the body. So now you're training your pecs like this, and now you're training your quads, and your body's damaged, okay? It only works out here on the outside of the feet, because that's the only place that neutral ankle is, And that's the only way you're going to allow all the muscles within the hips to just work how they do, and then traveling up again, right? Shoulders, now they're sitting naturally behind your body. It all stems at the feet. Again, even if you're not standing, even if you're just sleeping, even if you're in a wheelchair for your whole life, if you're in a wheelchair within shoes that are collapsing your arches, you can't even hold your own shoulders up. So, or tied unevenly, right? Your whole right side's external. As long as you're tying it toward that side, that would be the case. But over toward the inside evenly, because look, I mean, right? Because that's the only way the feet work. So, yes, naturally functioning feet. The big thing, you can potentially have things from years of patternings. I played soccer so much for a long time, within shoes and within boots, with heels and stiff soles, laced incorrect, tied uneven. And so, you know, anything where you're dorsiflexing your feet like that, any kind of kicking motion, if your shoe's tied external rather than, again, evenly over toward the inside, the only way the feet will ever work here, neutrally, this right side can get so bound up. All throughout here, right into the big toe, like I'm saying, has like no pressure to be able to put on it. It hurts. You're always stubbing your big toe, right? You're always hitting your right shin on the cart at the grocery store. These are the reasons. So, yes. Anyway, naturally functioning feet. Yeah. Man. It's cool. This, like I said, I'm gonna really enjoy this series because we'll go into things. I'm not gonna give any kind of promises, but things like the upper traps, right? Things that are very misunderstood. Yeah, that's one for sure that will, if we do another one in this series, which yeah, I mean, that's the point of starting a series. The upper traps is something that we would do if we do, because a lot of misconceptions there. They only work how they do. But again, if we do that, we're going to talk about the feet. Has to stem at the feet. Nothing within the body will ever work if the feet don't, meaning if they're altered in any way by something that's not them, right? An external source we place onto them, or a position we're placing them into often, which really wouldn't happen if there wasn't something placed onto us that wasn't allowing them to just do what they would do, because we would never intentionally walk around like this. People would be breaking their ankles all the time. But yeah, it's crazy. Well, I guess that's the thing, is that's what's happening. People are rolling their ankles, people are breaking their ankles, you know, people are having pain throughout their knees, their hips, their low back, their shoulders, their neck. And it's because their feet aren't in their only neutral position. What I'm going to do, I don't have socks on, as you can tell, because you've been seeing my feet throughout most all of this video. But I'm going to place these Zero Denver leather boots on my feet just to show. And what I'm going to do first is just put one of them on, so I can sit here, and keep in mind these are boots, right? And so I stop the lacing where my ankle flexes, but then the upper of this boot is still around my ankle a little bit. But as I'm sitting here, like, see how relaxed and loose my ankle is on the right foot that now has a boot on it? That's what I mean. In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique, it doesn't do anything to the foot. That's the point of having our technique the way that we use it. It's because it's the only one that shapes the shoe as your foot is shaped. I mean, I can do all the same things that I was doing before, right? I mean, I can do whatever with just one shoe on and still have the looseness to my ankle, other than, as I said, just, you know, the fact that it's a boot and it's coming above my ankle, so there's slight restriction. There really is, but I mean, I'm the one that purchased these boots. I love these boots, and I'm the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. So if I'm wearing them, then when I say slight restriction, I just mean because, I mean, it goes above the ankle a little bit. But see, the lacing stops here so that you can flex. Because look at the dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, pretty well evenly left to right. I mean, it's pretty much the exact same. Very close to it. So anyway, yeah, I'm only going to do it with one boot on because, I mean, it'd be the same thing on the other side. And this way you can tell. I mean, that's why we have the shoelacing technique that we do, right? Over toward the inside, because this is the foot that almost always gets tied external, right? So do it as I just did, not because I say, but it's the only way your feet work. Any human to ever live. Sure, you can have a deformity, but then your feet aren't functioning at the, like, baseline human being workings anyway. You know, I just mean, like, right? This is the technique. Don't let me tell you something. It's the only way the feet work. So, yes, there we go. Naturally functioning series, the feet. Look out for more if and when. And yeah. Because man, see, like, I mean, I don't know. It'll be as long as it needs to be. I mean, this video can live on forever. It's just truth. So the thing is, though, here's what's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. You're going to feel at first like you're on the outsides of your feet. And it's going to feel a little bit weird when you start to lace your shoes correct. Because if you've been walking around, again, like this, deactivated through your whole body, feet arches collapsed, but you know that something's kind of maybe a little bit off, or at least it seems like you shouldn't be in as much tension or pain as you are, but it's just become what you've been experiencing. And so it's, you don't really know what to do sometimes, because I didn't in the past. And you've got tension out here in the outsides of your legs, right? Lower back, upper traps, all the things, right? Your wrists are kind of down like this rather than neutral. It's going to feel, just because, as you can see here, going from here, as people walk in 2025 and run if they do, please don't, it's damaging to your body. And we'll get into it, right? And we do, and you can check out In The Image Clothing Company content. Once you just allow your body to function, you're not going to feel like you want to go on a run to get it to do something, because you can't get it to do something. Runners are always getting injuries. I mean, it's extremely common, more than just about anything else, for a runner to have injuries because they're running like this. Right? Keep in mind, as the past like 30 seconds or whatever, when I've been doing this, this is not anywhere near normal. I'm doing it to show this is normal, right? So, I mean, like, think about a fighter, right? Like a martial artist will also just try to sit like this if you want. Doesn't matter. I mean, don't feel like you should be able to or whatever. It's not about strength level, like compared to whatever, or in a certain position or whatever. But I just mean you'll never be able to do this with your feet like this. It's just not going to happen. Your wrists go out of their neutral, your shoulders go out of their neutral, your pelvis is anterior, core, I'm trying to keep my core activated, but here, the only neutral, okay? Naturally functioning feet. Now, there's a lot that goes into this, though, actually, because this is what happens a lot of the time. We have sports and certain things nowadays that we just never had in the past. Again, we have other things as well. Slippery synthetic materials we never had in the past. Unnaturally flat flooring we never had in the past, right? Sitting at chair heights in occupations that never existed in the past. Classrooms that weren't a thing in the past, to where our hamstrings are cut off and there goes your feet anyway. So there's a lot to this. Things in the front pockets, right, will put your pelvis anterior, put the focus on the front of your legs rather than the posterior chain, which means the rear of the body, where all the strength and functionality actually lies within the human being. Gripped, right, like this, internal in the rear, versus like pushing is external and in the front. The body works gripped toward itself. The only way an arch grips is inward, right? So because of those things, though, a lot of it's not people's fault, I mean, it's not your fault. And that's, I mean, we can say that with just about every single thing that we talk about within In The Image Clothing Company. It's not your fault, just as it wasn't mine until I was 24 and started to learn these things. It's not our fault. It's that we live in a modern man-made world, and so our bodies just don't mesh with something unnatural because they're natural. No opinion, no kind of way of looking at it. It's just, right? That's how it is. So anyway, feet, neutral. Neutral does mean slightly in. Neutral doesn't actually mean just like straightforward, because now my arches are actually collapsed, right? Neutral means slightly in. That's why I sit like this, right? And that's why I say it's the very outsides of your feet, really. And that's why I sit like, well, I mean, you're sitting like this. You're not going to be able to do that with your feet arches collapsed. And so you're trying to sit cross-legged on the ground. Your knees are in so much pain. Well, it's because your feet are not in their only neutral position. And so, well, that's beautiful. That is a beautiful example. I was sitting like this earlier, but when I discuss it like that, right? Again, neutrally outward curve all the way from the knee down to the very base of the heel of the foot. Okay, on both feet. This is how you actually sit like this. And this, again, is only this. Okay, this is this. Well, I want to show this. I can't really get up because of the flatness to the floor. But if I'm sitting here and I go like this, then I can get up because I can actually grip the ground with my feet. Okay, I mean, yeah, that internal rotation like this, right? Again, you're just furthering that neutrality, if you will, of that bow. When you go internal from like neutral, right, still slightly in, when you grip the ground like this, you're just coming toward yourself. You're just really gripping the ground. So muscles like the glute medius, for example, right out here, doctors might be trying to tell you to train that to help your IT band syndrome, your chondromalacia patella, right, your runner's knee, your, again, shin splints, right, whatever it is. No, if you don't address your shoelacing and all the things that I discussed within this, even again those tongue tabs, all the little things we talk about within the Image Clothing Company, you will never activate muscles like your glute medius. You will never get your hamstrings to stop taking over for your glutes, meaning being excessively tight just because they're trying to do anything that's normal when your feet aren't, right? That's why your hamstrings are actually in pain, is things like shoelacing techniques. And it's the feet and waistband of the pelvis, or, I mean, like, or the pants on the, right? I mean, we can get into all the things, even all the way up to the shoulders will affect the hamstrings, but the body only works as a whole, right? But yeah, the feet are the prerequisite to anything within the body. There's only one way they work. They're the very lowest. We talk about foundations, right? You're building a skyscraper. The entirety of every bit of it, besides the very foundation, is just exactly how it was supposed to be made, but the foundation has a little bit of alteration, like my feet right here, collapsed arches sticking outward in external rotation. The whole building collapses, even though every bit of it was right, from like the ankles up, but the feet are altered, okay? The body's collapsing. The body's broken, literally. I mean, it's in so much pain, physical discomfort and pain, and yeah. So the feet, right? They're the first thing, and that's, I mean, regardless, it wouldn't have to be this way, but they're a good thing to start this series with because they're the first thing. They're the prerequisite, right? In the Image Clothing Company's two prerequisites are shoelacing and tying, plus removing all tags. The human body's prerequisite to even be able to do anything throughout the rest of it are the feet being unaltered, right? So anyway, neutral. Even like this, right? My foot's off the ground besides my heel, but it's still that outward neutral curved position. My right foot is in a little bit different position, but still that outward neutral curve position. And there's only one way the feet work. So don't waste your time. Check out In the Image Clothing Company. It's not about us. It's truly not. But it's because we speak the truth. And it's not that... I want to say this, a little bit of context within this. A lot of doctors are lying to you because they can get things from it, right? I mean, doctors make a lot of money if they can have a surgery be done, or if they can sell you orthotics, right? If they can do physical therapy because your feet have X amount of whatever going on with them that's altering your fingertips as well, right? I mean, just the whole body. But then some doctors just don't know, right? If the doctors themselves just are buying shoes from the store and they've come with tags in the tongues, they've come laced incorrect, and the doctor doesn't know how to because it's not something most people would even ever think about, right? Even tongue tabs, like I'm saying, they get the idea that they need athletic shoes, quote unquote, the way they're branded, but then the athletic shoe, which is intended on trying to let your body be naturally working and mobile, elevates your heel off the ground, which is a position your body would never be in without a man-made thing altering it. So, right, it's things like that. We speak truth. Don't believe me. That's why I can say that so boldly on both ends, because it is what it is, but you just have to see it. I always say, like, it's as obvious as it is once you see it, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is help people just know how their own body works. And I like to say as well, I can tell you how your body works. I know that's weird. You're living like over in London, right? And I'm just sitting here in the state of Utah, and I'm telling you how your body works. I've never met you. Well, I can. And I can actually tell you the truth. But again, don't believe me. Truth manifests itself to you. Do these things for yourself within your own life. If you never see me personally, if I never have the ability to like diagnose your physical person, it doesn't matter, because we're all universally designed, skeletal system wise. And so that's just how the feet work. period, and done, as I say, right? Don't believe me, but it's the truth. So anyway, cool. There you go. There you go. And there you go. Check out In the Image Clothing Company podcast, man. We speak some crazy stuff over there in a good way. In the Image Clothing Company music. I make music. Talk about setups of guitars, as I said. I mean, I said some of this at the beginning, but this series is going to be really sweet. There's a lot of context, and I love that I'm on the ground. I love that it's an unconventional type of location, right, where I'm just like half in and half out of a bathroom on the floor. Pretty weird, but this is In the Image Clothing Company. Raw, real. We're not sitting here trying to sell you anything, right? Oh, yeah, we'll talk about the clothing. That's... Oh, I mean, when I say that, I mean, that's not our intent. We will have clothing. As I said at the beginning, it will stay centered. It will fit correct, and it will allow the body to work. Do all that you can do, though, to purchase it in your size. If you ever do, don't even purchase it if you don't want to. And especially do not purchase In the Image Clothing Company clothing ever if your intent is to buy it oversized. Don't. Your body will be damaged. And our whole goal, physically, right, is allowing the human body to work. And that only happens if the seams of our clothing sit at the joints of our body. And again, we don't know what we don't know. I'm not condemning anybody when I speak so like boldly and like I sound like I'm talking down on people. It's just you have to be as bold as it is, because again, doctors tell people things that are just entirely false. No opinion of mine that I could even have, right? So truth is truth. Don't believe me. There we go. Cool. All right. Thank you. I'm gonna cut it just like that. But oh yeah, the point is though, In the Image Clothing Company clothing, it'll be cool. Right, it'll be pretty minimal, 100% natural materials, just does what it says that we, does what we say it'll do. The whole like idea behind it, no guarantee, but just like ideally like 10-year clothing, right? Stuff you can just purchase and it'll just be good and last. So yeah, I'm very minimal and extremely intentionable, right? And also intentional, if that first one is something you can be. Intentionable, but that's how our clothing will be, right? Just something simple, nice, great, do everything in type of clothing. So there you go. But we also, here on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, we've got so many modifications. I mean, I've gone over, I really think pretty much everything within clothing that you could need to know how to modify or what to look for, how to just allow things to fit the body and allow the body to work, right? So you by no means do you ever have to purchase anything from In the Image Clothing Company at all. We're just here to speak truth. We do so much more than clothing, like I said. So yeah, cool. But that's the other thing though, right? I mean, you've got questions on why you're not sleeping so well. Well, check out In the Image Clothing Company, right? Why you're eating so much food but still don't feel like you're actually benefiting from it, and your body doesn't seem like it's extracting the nutrients from it. Check out In the Image Clothing Company. If you like music, In the Image Clothing Company music, right? If you want to know how to navigate this world around you, we speak on the truth of all things, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Don't believe me, but check out In the Image Clothing Company podcast if you want a ride, brother. It gets kind of crazy over there in a good way. So I'm gonna wrap it up just like that. Okay. Thank you.